Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Language of Leadership podcast. This is Mike here, and I am so thrilled to welcome Adam Bragg as our guest today. Adam is an Ivy League track and field record holder, a graduate of Princeton University, native of Southern California, and serial entrepreneur, even though he is, still quite a young and robust guy over there. Adam, welcome. Great to see you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mike. It's great to be here.
Well, Adam, I'm really grateful that you're able to take the time to join us and the Learning Leaders community today to talk about your journey and all of the lessons you've learned along the way, particularly because I think your focus on leadership, on education, has been ever present throughout your journey. So could you just kick things off by taking us on a little bit of that path from when you were a kid to where you are today?
Yeah, so I am working on a lot in the education space. I think that it's one of the most inspiring, places to create because it can impact so many young lives. Because and I started in that space because I remember back when I was younger, going through high school, having so many different routes presented to me and not a whole lot of opportunity to make sense of it all. I think that, and that's even more of the case today. You have the amount of information in the world that's available and even presented to young students. It's kind of through the roof. And a lot of the students have that information, but they don't really, they haven't really found a way to chart their own path through it. And I think that's always a difficulty for a young person. And so kind of adding the resources, for those students that want to embrace their own path and see all of this information in the world and see it as opportunities and say, there are so many routes that I can take graduating from high school. I can go to traditional college. I can go and learn anything online and on YouTube or Coursera or, go travel the world. I think that we're moving into a space where younger people can take control of their pathways. And I remember graduating from even college, and I graduated and started training for the Tokyo Olympic Games, but I still was unsure as to the actual professional pathway that I wanted to take. And so it led me through a lot of experimentation. It led me through a lot of discovery, and I was active in that process. And it was that active piece that really brought things together for me. And so with my company, the U Experience, we're creating independent campuses for students who are learning online. So it can be learning online from any university, from any online school, and they can all come together in the same place and get that social experience. So we're kind of supporting those go-getters and hustlers that are leading themselves.
Amazing. We're gonna jam in just a moment about what the U Experience is and how it works and how students can get involved with it. To think about linking your competitive athletics career with where you are today. I mean, competitive athletics at the level you were competing and achieving is no easy feat. Setting records and being on the USA national team, that takes an incredible amount of discipline. And for many students out there, I think discipline and focus and routine and habits is always a hot topic. Would it be possible to share a little bit about your experience, what you learned in terms of training and how that influenced your life?
Yeah, definitely. I was a pole vaulter, so it was a particularly mental event. I think it's fear and overcoming fear is sort of intrinsic in that event, and you're jumping over 19 feet and you're trusting kind of a pole as you run up, and it kind of completely bending and unbending to throw you up. It takes a lot of commitment, and I think that the level of commitment that it takes, especially as you get to get to the edge of your abilities, it's not something that just happens overnight, and confidence doesn't just appear on the runway, I would always say. And it's something that you build over time, and it's not just while you're practicing, but it's like a sort of across the board, how you look at things, how you're looking at approaching your homework assignments, because I noticed that in school, if I was kind of dropping the ball on my homework assignments or my coursework, I couldn't hide that from my mind and my idea of myself as I ran down the runway. So it was like I had to be consistent across kind of the different areas of my life. And then I could pull that all together into a single moment of like big confidence that was necessary. But then, even over the course of like the focus over the course of an entire career of pole vaulting, I think is also reflective of what's necessary as a student or as an entrepreneur. It's kind of like, you're not going to get the immediate success and you're not going to get the immediate results. And being able to not lose focus and come back at the end of the day of trying and making effort and saying, okay, I'm going to rest. And then tomorrow I'm going to do it all again and continue to do that, stay true to that process until I see the result. I think there's a huge carryover there to both entrepreneurship, but also just student life and leading oneself.
And right there, as you say, student life, leading oneself, athletics, entrepreneurship, in all of these situations, it feels to me as though there's a simultaneous like single player game and multiplayer game happening. Like, when you're on the runway, it's you and the pole, and there are no excuses, right? You either clear it or you don't.
Yeah.
When you're in business, you either get that done or you don't. You either get that grade or you don't. And yet, in all of those circumstances, you have this support network around you. Maybe it's teamwork and coach, or colleagues and investors, or parents and teachers and mentors. So, do you have any experiences to share where it was, you're the focal point of the attention, but you had this support network around you? How do you leverage people within your network, and whether it be family or friends, coaches, mentors, to help you succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we'll start out with kind of what the pole vault looks like. It's like a Cirque du Soleil event, and in a stadium that where people are watching you. Pole vaulters and jump events, they actually do this thing called a slow clap. So you start clapping, and it starts to build up and build up and build up, and the entire audience is watching you, individually, and you've called for this clap. You're basically saying, everybody, look at me as I do this individual event. But like if you zoom out and say, what did it take to get there? Even something as simple as traveling with a 17-foot long pole bag. Like that's really difficult and hard to be done alone. You
can't put that in the carry-on, right?
No, definitely not. That is something that even some planes don't even allow you on. So that's a whole other obstacle. But there's all of these sort of things that go into place on both the actual like physical world, but then the emotional support, and then being able to rely on people. And I think that it's what I've learned is that it's in athletics and entrepreneurship and student life, it's as much of a give as it is a take. It's one of those things where you can, if you focus more so on how you're contributing to the situation, people will naturally come around you and want to support that. So like the first thing that I think about in creating a new product is who does this help and how does it help? And if it helps a lot of people and in a good way, that's probably a good route to take. And then you'll find those people that are helping you, and they'll kind of come and support you. In the same way, it's in student life. I remember going through and really wanting to get a good grade on my SAT, for example. And although some schools now are opting out of that, but it's still relevant. And I think that as you pursue these goals that you have as an individual, if you can say, like, if you can connect that to a larger vision, a larger mission, how that thing impacts the world around you and how you're going to kind of carry the rest of it and give, people around you are going to support you. You're going to get people throwing you free resources and, access links to tutoring sites and things like that.
That's a great insight, I think, and something that I think is a little bit scary, right? To put oneself out there. I mean, in your case, in pole vaulting, it was the slow clap, but that takes a leap of faith, right? You got to kind of jump off the edge and hope that everyone spectating, your teammates, whatever, are going to clap with you. The same as starting a company, right? Please forgive the misquoting, but I think it was Reid Hoffman who said, building a company is like jumping off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down. And on the way down, you got to get that team to help build around you. So how are you doing that now at the U experience? How do you build the team and how do you get everyone together to achieve this mission?
Yeah, so it really is like it is building an airplane kind of on the way down, and it's also calling on everybody else to add gas to it, because it's the users, the people who buy into the mission are the gasoline. So they're ultimately going to make the thing fly. So it's as much as kind of assembling all of the parts, the team around you that are going to help you. And that's kind of shared vision. But the shared vision moves further along, even into the early adopter the early user phase, where people, it's not in its perfect form, but people believe that what you're doing is gonna help them and connects with them personally and the things that they believe. So where we're at right now, I started the company with a couple of my friends from college, and they were on the track team with me. And our whole idea is that it's as much about the hands you shake as it is about the grades you make. It's the people that you meet and this network that you build that ultimately will set you over the edge and present new opportunities to you. And so, we came together, we had this vision, and we've been able to share that vision of like a place where students can take control of their education and choose their own pathways while not giving up all of the college experience. We've shared that with a ton of people, and we've got a lot of support on the business side, but we also have a lot of students and parents who are really interested in this because it's something completely different than the traditional collegiate route. And it's not for everybody at the current moment, but that's why you focus on the early adopters and for the people who really believe in the mission. And so the best thing you can do is just be clear with what that vision is and say it as often and as loudly as possible.
And walk us through, to the extent that you can, what exactly does this look like on a daily basis? Is it students are in a gated community? Are they on a cruise ship? Are they in a spaceship? Are they in a resort? How does it work?
Spaceships would be great pretty soon. But we have a network of campuses where students can choose to be in any one and continue their learning in the coursework that they've chosen by just taking their laptop along with them. So they take their laptop. That's where all of the courses are. Those are that's where their school is. But where they learn can change. And so they can learn with a small community, in one city, and then meet some people that might want to go travel to another campus in the network of campuses we're going to be launching is looking like later on this year. And we're building out where our campuses are going to be and how we're going to kind of orient the community, because it really is the community that's the destination. We're unbundling the college experience and then providing it to any students who aren't pursuing in-person college and they're doing it online.
And how are you going about selecting these locales? I have to believe like New York City is super exciting for students to go to, but Podunk, insert, less popular state here is less so. So how do you go about figuring this out?
Yeah, I think our emphasis is really on the people. It's the community itself that brings other people together. For the same reason that some of these colleges are in kind of podunk, middle of nowhere, but still have 40,000, 50,000 people coming to them just for the specific reason of being at the school. And then for most undergraduates, for the specific reason of being around other undergraduates their age. And so what we're saying is that there definitely are going to be some premier locations where you have, really rich city lives. But then there's also going to be locations where you can select something that's maybe a bit removed, and maybe you grew up in a city all of your life and you want to be in a quiet space while you're hanging out with other people. But it's going to be, the actual campuses are sort of rich environments of collaboration and idea sharing. And because you're not in the same class necessarily, you're not competing for that grade, you can unlock collaboration in ways that you might be kind of worried about helping a student out in the same class because they might nudge you out of a grade. That doesn't exist in this campuses where you could be going to 1,000 different institutions all at the same time.
Oh, hang on. That is super fascinating. When students are currently in middle school, high school, university, I know that, if I talk to them directly, they're not going to admit it, and neither will their parents. And I'm sorry, everyone, for, pulling back the curtain here, but there is a little bit of competition, right? if you are in AP Calculus and you have a great AP Calculus tutor, you actually might be a little bit hesitant to share that resource with a friend, because in the end, you're in the same class, same grades, only a certain amount of kids can get an A, only a certain amount of kids can be valedictorian. So this idea of cooperation among students, it sounds a lot more like real life, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not in a job or creating running a business or, producing and in competition with the person on the other team. That's a team within your organization, and you're all pointing towards the same goal, which I think our fundamental idea shift is that you shouldn't rely on credentials to showcase how much you know. It's actually competency. And so everybody shouldn't be racing towards the grade output. You should be racing towards learning the most and learning the most efficiently and in as many areas as you can. And so if you're surrounded by people who, you remove the incentives that are at play when you compete or that make competition a thing, you're able to relax a bit more and focus on the things that actually matter, which are not can I regurgitate this information, but am I actually internalizing it? And can I have a discussion with somebody, another student who's learning the same thing, but from a different school? And that kind of, it bakes in collaboration into that environment.
What do you think a world looks like where credentialism has lost its value compared to actually being able to do the darn thing?
Yeah, I think there will always be a place where credentials are important to some people. But I think that the credential is sort of it should not. The credential used to mean that you went through the educational process and the social educational process. So you're coming out and you're a well thinking, well functioning member of society. And I think that it's come to mean competency, where competency is just a measure of how well am I going to do this job. So I think a world that eliminates the credential or takes the weight off of that and places it on competency is one that puts employers and the students in closer contact and even in collaboration with each other. So you have employers giving input into the curriculums, and you have employers giving input and asking questions even of students as they learn. That way it's real time, sort of real questions that they would face after school. And so you're seeing a huge disconnect right now from students who are dropping out of college their first year, and they're looking around and saying, the thing that I was sold about being here on this college campus is not something that's really coming true. I don't feel like I've found myself. I feel like I'm further away from, I've just been presented with more things. And I like the idea of getting a job is even further removed, where a lot of students who aren't going that route are finding very direct paths to employment, and even creating the employment opportunities for themselves. And they're saying, so I think the world looks like the disintegration of what actual higher education means. And you say, what do we get down to it? It's a student and an employer or somebody who wants what they're learning coming closer together. And this person who has the call for learning actually give that student more traction and more things to actually learn.
So I want to briefly share an experience, Adam, and then I'm going to come around to a question, because I'm really eager to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
It's that in this sort of, as you said, the early adopter mindset of higher education, there's no question that with being an early adopter of any technology or social group, there comes with risk in order to do that. If it wasn't risky, then everyone would do it. In some of my experience being here in Shanghai, and with many of the families and students that we have the privilege of working with, they have had parents or grandparents who have worked their tails off to put their kids in a position of great opportunity, and nothing but immense respect for everything that they've done. And sometimes what I notice is with that comes a slight degree of risk aversion. It's almost like mom and dad grew up with a very modest upbringing. We're doing everything that we can for you. And neither bad nor good, not for better or for worse, but it is seen as the gold standard to attend Princeton, attend Dartmouth, join McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Goldman, Google, Facebook, whatever, excuse me, Meta. So there exists a degree of risk aversion sort of built into coming from a place of opportunity. So I'm curious as to what are the backgrounds of the students that you work with at the U Experience? Are they students from all over the world, all shapes and sizes? Do they have different goals? Because right now it strikes me like the students who have the least to lose would be the ones who would most likely try something a little bit out there, a little bit risky. And at the same time, personally, I know that if I was in the college market today, I'd probably be the first person to sign up for U Experience because I'm just not great at learning in a classic classroom environment. I'm much more, sort of hands-on and community-based. So I'm really curious, like, who are the backgrounds of these students? Where are they coming from? And do you see any patterns in the types of students that are taking advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, so right now we're in the stage of building that virtual community that we're then going to be able to place in the physical space. And so we're thinking specifically those questions, who are these students and how can we target them and like welcome them in and say, you might be choosing the online route because it's something that because you didn't fit in the traditional system, but you might still be feeling the shortcomings of that choice and saying, well, where do I learn and how am I going to meet new people? And then saying, there is a place for you that didn't exist before. Here's the U Experience, and you can come meet a bunch of like-minded students just like you who have chosen to embrace this path. So it's kind of like empowering the choice that students have made to either get more financially reasonable educations or to say I just want to embrace the nomad lifestyle of being able to learn on my laptop anywhere that I want. And so, there are some larger trends that are happening. And I think that like the one you speak on is like the parents are generally the ones footing the bill for students going to college. And so they can leverage a lot of that influence over their student or their child as they go and become students of higher education. And so there's like this built-in moat that happens after if a school graduates a student, 30 years ago, and now they're a parent of a student who's going to school. The parent doesn't necessarily want to discount the route they've already taken, even though the world looks completely different these days. The availability of information just wasn't the same when they were going through school, and even just the amount of information that's being produced on a day-to-day basis. I can watch a YouTube lecture series of the best economics professor and watch his entire class. And I couldn't do that if I went to another school, 20 years ago. But now I can use that as a resource. And these types of things are popping up that actually make non-traditional routes more effective. And they haven't been showcased or touted yet, as I think that they will over, the next 5 or 10 years when online learning gets really sharp and gets really effective and actually starts gaining some reputational credibility amongst parents and saying, well, this is a good route. You can come out getting a high paying job. And once I think you see that happen, once you see employers start to embrace online learning or non-traditional pathways of higher education, that tide will shift, because then the student can point to it and say, yeah, but mom, I can get a high paying job. And in fact, I'm going through this. It takes me a year and this coding boot camp, and I'm, guaranteed employment afterwards. That's something that colleges can't do. So that'll shift things up a bit.
It's such an exciting time, right? There's so many things changing and so many things shifting. On that point, I have to ask you, the elephant in the room question. How do you think COVID has changed or will change higher education? I mean, I know this is right up your alley in terms of impacting where college campuses are able to operate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it put online learning into like a huge demand, like right in front of people's faces. It said immediately, everybody try it right now and make an opinion about it. That's good in a lot of ways because it's exposed that to a lot of people, and a lot of people have recognized how good it is. It's also kind of exposed a lot of shortcomings that you read about on the news, where students are feeling not as connected with their class or with their professors, and so a lot of learning opportunities there for new kind of ed tech companies coming up. But I think it's a bit too early to decide that it's not the answer, as a lot of kind of educational thinkers are. I think it's like, imagine if Tesla, right on its sort of in the first early stages of its creation, you forced everybody to sit and drive it with all of kind of the technical flaws that are still baked in, and forced everybody to take an opinion about electric cars through firsthand experience. The general feeling about electric cars might be a bit more pessimistic than what Elon Musk was able to do with like a roadster just at first and make it flashy for a few people. But I think we're going to get through the rocky stage. I think we're going to get through the stage where people who are still pessimistic about it aren't the ones most listened to, and you're going to see more and more come out about how great technology can be in supplementing educational processes. Because for us, it's like, what does it look like to learn online together in person? What kinds of collaboration opportunities are there? What kinds of pieces can you use to supplement your learning while learning, amongst people from other places or different thought processes, from different institutions? So I think it just unlocks a whole bunch of possibilities that we haven't wrapped our arms around just yet as like a collective kind of educational society. But I think eventually we will, and we'll integrate technology in the same ways that we did in commerce, and how you see the benefits of that.
And with education changing, with the role of the university changing, or pre-employment training changing, it strikes me as though that the context in which we're operating are rapidly evolving, and therefore often so must our leadership. I'd really be happy to hear from your perspective, how your leadership has evolved and changed over time, and how you see it changing in the future, both with you as well as just the greater context of remote communities and leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think the moving where it's at today, it's sort of rapidly evolving to say, like, how do we even change the context of what and who leaders are? So who is actually leading the moves in higher education? And before, it was the faculty and the administration and the people who were deciding the curriculum and who gets in. And those were the leaders of higher education. But I think what you're seeing is the people who they're actually serving, the students, are starting to make more of the demands, and their preferences are going to be the ones that lead. And so it's like the actual students themselves that are stepping into a place of leadership, whether they've embraced it yet or not. And it's because they're able to, and so strong in their expressions of preference today. I think you have social media, a ton of information being thrown at students, and they can just say no, no, next post, next post, next post. And that gives a lot of preference making to the student, and gives them an ability to chart their own experiences in the virtual space and in the real world. And they're going to call that and make that demand of the universities. If you're not giving me as a student what I want, I can go look elsewhere, because there's a million other options. And that's going to put them in the position of leader, and not necessarily, the head of Harvard.
What is your leadership style? If we were to join the offices of the U Experience, or any of the other ventures you're working on, which we'll get to in a second, or I guess join the proverbial Zoom call, what is Adam Bragg like as a leader?
Yeah, I think that what I try to get to is like what is it that is your preference of production, and how do I support that? I think that when people feel like you value their talents and you value their perspective, and you genuinely brought them on a team to contribute and not just to kind of micromanage them or tell them what to do, but I value your contribution in as creative or direct ways as you'd like to bring them on. I saw that when you were brought on to the organization. So how do I help support that? And I think that's, that works on a one-on-one environment. But if you can build a company where that collaboration and that amount of trust is sort of built in, you can start to bring all of the best ideas together, because especially young people today, they have a ton of really great ideas and they just want to be heard. They just want those ideas to be fielded and then, sort of supported to make them happen.
And was there a particularly challenging or critical decision that you and your team made in the early days of you experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a lot of them. I think some of the most challenging ones was like, how do we share this vision to people? How do we package it in ways that when it doesn't quite yet exist? So what kinds of channels can we make, and what kinds of connections can we make with people, and coordinate them in ways that make it a reality without it existing yet? So, building a virtual community before we put them into the physical space. And so like the challenge there was, what is the vision itself? How do you pull it all together and express it in a kernel size that allow people to get on board? And so it was kind of like the exercise of building from scratch. And I think that's what any young entrepreneur kind of confronts. And if they have a team around them, it's important to lead and say like, yes, this is the direction that I want, but it's equally, if not more important, to field all of the different contributions that people have. Because even in those like initial formative phases of just inviting ideas, the more you can get, the better. And by creating a space where people feel good about sharing, am I still on the line here?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. The more you can build a space where people feel really good about sharing, the better ideas you get. And, any challenge in front of you at least has like a million ideas thrown at how to overcome it.
And let's imagine that I'm a student leader. I'm the head of the student council for my class or a volunteer group. What is one or two sort of tactical recommendations that you could give to someone who's a student leader to be clear about their own perspective, but also encourage other people to make suggestions and contributions?
Definitely. Listen, I think, is a big one. I think you can't clearly understand somebody else if they haven't been able to express what it is they're trying to get you to understand. So ask a ton of questions, reiterate what you think they said and confirm that is, the idea of it. I think that's kind of coming to a clear understanding of where you both are at. That way you can step forward and try to kind of piece the bridge together or to where you're trying to go. So listen would be the first one. And then I would say action. I think that the more you do, the more new possibilities open up. So a lot of people get stuck in the ideation phase but like trying things out, actually testing it out in the real world. So listening and doing. So, those two in tandem, I think are good tactical additions to a toolkit.
Great. And it strikes me like it's probably a cycle of listen, do, go back and keep everybody in the loop as you're going through that process.
Yeah, because you're not just listening to the coworkers or to your partners. You're also listening to the people who are interfacing with what it is you're doing. I think so. Listening is important all the way around. You're right.
Brilliant. Well, Adam, what else are you working on these days? I know that you have a few other aces up your sleeve. What's going on?
Yeah, so I am I'll stay I have one more project in the education space, and then I'm actually working on something really exciting in the healthcare space. So I have what I was noticing with students in education, the U Experience is a really great platform for, big changes in education. And I noticed that there's really direct ways that students are being underserved right now. So direct communication between them and the educators around them are getting really strained. And so students don't feel heard. Educators don't feel like they're getting their points across, or that they're able to communicate effectively with their students. And so there's a disconnect between the students and the educators, and engagement suffers because of that. And so I kind of have this project called EdCheck, and what EdCheck does is it's a platform where students who have questions about their coursework can ask them directly digitally to their professors. They can take a picture of it. They can upload their question and work on a chat basis, a high volume basis between them and their professors. So I'm really excited about where that's at. I think that it's just kind of a small tool that students in school can use to connect with their professors a bit better. And then on the healthcare front, I just started a company about half a year ago called QuickrHealth, and it's about it's a health record management system that allows patients to be the central access point of all of their medical information. So instead of a doctor in the US having to go and request by fax the medical records of another clinic, the patient can carry them themselves. And when they show up and arrive at the office, all of that wasted time and inefficiency allows the patient, the doctor, to get the information quicker, and the patient to get healed faster.
Brilliant. And where can we go to learn more about those projects you're working on?
Yeah, edcheck.app and quicker.health are the URLs for those. And for the U Experience, it's the uexperience.com.
Brilliant. Well, Adam, before we let you go, if you could, put one summary or tie something in a bow for us, what do you think is a really critical piece of leadership advice or guidance that you would give to students beginning their tertiary education or journeys in their careers right now?
Yeah, I think explore. I think that's the biggest piece for a young student. Some students do know right away what it is that they want to do. And a lot of students feel a bit lost, and it's okay to feel a bit lost. I think when you're lost as a student, that's like a call to adventure. That's a call to explore. And there's so many avenues. Google is a limitless sort of thread of information where you can just learn anything from anywhere. All you need to do is take that action to explore. And if you wake up every day and you say, I'm going to learn about something new today, or I'm going to ask more questions today and find the answers to those questions, in a year or 2 or 4 years down the line, if you've taken that action every day to explore new ideas and to explore new avenues, you're going to come up with something good that really matches who you are. Because you've been exposed to so many different pathways, you can layer that learning on top of each other. And if there's not a professional route that exists for you, make it. And that's kind of where the world goes. So is going. So explore. That's, I think, the biggest piece. I
love it. And I think one of the critical tenets of leadership is to lead by example, and you're clearly exploring now.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Bragg, Ivy League pole vault record holder, very soon setting new records in the ed tech and health tech space. Adam, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Talk again soon.
Bye.